What's up, everybody? Metal Dave here, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are joined by bassist Billy Chainsaw of the band Ignitor. Billy has been a friend of ours for many, many years, and in the case of Jason, is a bandmate in Ignitor. Ignitor has a brand new album out called Horns and Hammers. It's amazing if you're into new wave of British heavy metal, traditional metal, maybe some power metal, all that stuff stirred up in a pot. That is Ignitor, and it really comes through on the new album, Horns and Hammers. Couple of singles out already. I know there's a Saxon cover, Machine Gun. You guys covered the Saxon song.
Well, that's the only one that's out currently.
Currently, okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a video for it on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, go look up the video. Guest appearance by Mark Lopes, the vocalist for Metal Church, sings with Jason on that track. And Ross the Boss, guests on guitar. Ross, of course, from Manowar, The Dictators, and his own band, Ross the Boss. So some star power on this album, great collection of songs, amazing artwork from Claudio Bergamin. We talk about all of that today with Billy, but man, congratulations to you and the guys on a great album.
Yeah, thanks. We get into depth with it, and it's funny. I mean, me being a member and focal point of Ignitor and having a podcast, you know, it's not something that I always. It's not planned that, if I have my own podcast, I can promote my own shit.
Right.
Well, I can, and
Sure.
I do, but it's not the reason we have a podcast. It's interesting, and we get to hang out, and that's great. And whether they're a longtime friend of ours or not, which makes it special, right?
Yeah.
And the stories are closer to home is all, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as awesome as it is to have Billy on here, you know, Billy has been playing in bands with my younger brother, Randy McMaster, for decades. And
Right.
one of those had Bobby Landgraf, Bobby Rock, who's been on the show a couple times, who's now the new bassist for Corrosion of Conformity,
Yeah.
who has played in Down. Yeah, I love Bobby, and everyone does. And but Bobby was in Nosebleed with my brother Randy and Billy Chainsaw, who played guitar.
Right.
He played guitar and sang backup. Nosebleed, you might be able to find some recordings out there. Billy was also and is a prominent member of the band Agony Column. And then when Ignitor was in need of a bassist, you know, going on 10 years ago, he was standing right there because, you know, Stuart from Ignitor, lead guitar, Ignitor's his baby, Stuart Bat Lord Laurence. The Bat Lord, we needed a bass player, and Billy was standing right there. You know, well, you're here for Agony Column rehearsal. You might as well keep standing right there with your bass plugged in and play Ignitor today because, yeah. So it's been great to be in a band with a guy that I've known as a guy who's been in bands with my younger brother forever, right? So,
yeah.
And it's been fantastic, and he's a great player.
Right.
Left-handed with the strings still on it as a right-handed player would play.
I've never understood how anyone plays like that.
So
but
when he's hitting high notes, he's up high. He's up top on the neck where normally the fat string is.
Right.
So it's weird watching him play.
Yeah.
But it's how he learned. He plays guitar the same way. There's other players that play the same way. I think Little Doyle Bramhall plays like that.
Correct. I was just going to say.
Strung right-handed, but plays it left-handed. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So, but I just wanted to add to what you're saying. Yeah, Billy Dansfield he's a cool cat, and it's been fun playing an Ignitor with him, and he got emotional today a little bit on this record, and showing a lot of pride, as he should be, in the new Ignitor record. When, you know, the 3 records that he's on, they're all good, as you confessed yourself.
They're great. Yes. Yeah, they're more than good. They're great. I say throughout this episode that I think this is the trifecta.
Mm.
Um, with the new album Horns and Halos, and then you go, or sorry, Horns and Hammers, and then you go backwards to the Golden Age of Black Magic, and before that, Haunted by Rock and Roll. Three great albums. It's kind of like when Voivod did Dimension Hatros into Nothing Face into Angel Rat. You know, it's one of those periods in a band's history where they put out three albums sort of late in their career where the magic just happened. Everything just worked. And I think that's where you guys are with Ignitor right now. This album is just amazing. I was able to hear it early on, obviously, and absorbed it and loved it and started talking to people about it before it was even out. So it's out now. People can hear it for themselves. And yeah, it's really cool. You and Billy have been friends for a long time. Both of you guys are steeped in Austin music history. It's really cool that you guys are in a band together. And the other guys in Ignitor have been around forever too in their respective projects.
Well, and we talk about that a little bit. Pat Doyle was drummer for The Offenders.
Yeah.
And The Offenders are globally known as a purveyor of early Texas punk rock and hardcore. And, you know, they were kids from Killeen, Texas, right down the road from Austin, and playing in the 80s and played shows with Watchtower. You know, it was when the crossover thing was starting to roll, and metal bands would play with punk bands, and what a great time for heavy, loud, fast music.
Yeah.
Because they're related, and that should have been happening the whole time. And there was a time where, you know, the Liberty Spike, you know, Mohawk couldn't get along with the long-haired heavy metal headbanger guy, and that kind of went away quickly with the realization of a lot of bands, and Agony Column was part of that movement. The Offenders were part of that movement. Watchtower played shows. I mean, what kind of band is Watchtower anyway? Just because
Right.
we looked like a heavy metal band, but not really a heavy metal band. When you hear it, it sounds like this fast, crazy Rush on speed, right? And that's fine. 2112 in a blender, right? So when you think like that, it's like, okay, well, they're a metal band. Kind of. Well, here you are playing with shows. We played shows with the big boys in MDC and shit like that, you know. And the guys in DRI wearing Watchtower shirts and shit like that. And speaking of, Mikey Offender, who was in The Offenders with Pat, played bass on DRI, Dealing With It.
Oh yeah.
So that's people forget that, and they should not fucking forget that at all. So he was already into, like Billy reminds us, Mikey Offender was already into Motorhead and crossover and things like that. So there's this thing, and Stuart is legend around here because Agony Column was kind of his baby, just as Ignitor is his baby. He's a creator, right? And so between Pat and Stuart and Billy, it's kind of this all-star kind of like regional, like power super group, if you will.
Yeah.
If you throw my name in there, it just, you know, becomes an anvil. You know, when you drop an anvil, that's what you get, is this kind of like, holy shit, all these dudes have all this backstory. And Ignitor might sound fresh to them. It won't sound like Watchtower. It won't sound like anything. It won't sound like Agony Column. It won't sound like anything that anybody in the group has done in the past. It's its own thing, traditional heavy metal. And I'm glad that you wanted to talk to me and Billy about it today.
Yeah, yeah. And for people that are listening and watching that may not be as familiar with Ignitor because you're not from here in Texas or whatever, if you like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Scorpions, Merciful Fate, Accept, Ronnie James Dio, all that type of stuff, you're going to find something to like with Ignitor. And the list goes beyond that, but just to throw out some obvious references for people that aren't familiar at all with Ignitor, those are your starting points. And yeah, I heard the new album and I was like, man, we got to your point earlier. You're like, I have this podcast, but I don't do a lot of promoting my own stuff. And I was like, dude, we got to get somebody from Ignitor on the show. and talk about this album because I want to talk about this album. So, yeah, it was great to have Billy on the show and hear some of the backstory as to how this album came together, because it is a fine piece of work. My hat's off to everyone in the band. And yeah, so today, Billy Chainsaw from Ignitor on the Talk Louder podcast.
You look like you're 1,000,000 miles tall, like a fucking giant. Yeah.
But he's in focus. So
Billy, how are you doing today?
Yes.
Man, all things considered, this long weekend, it's been a hell of a weekend. Yeah.
Tell us about it. Tell us all about it.
I'm doing good. So I'll start with Friday. Had the big Agony Column Skate Nig show down at Come and Take It Live.
Badass.
Which went off incredibly.
Awesome.
Big full house. Great big family reunion feeling thing, and I know you know.
Oh, yeah.
Just everybody, and there was just so much love in that room, and it really took me back to the old Liberty Lunch shows, when that band was really packing them in,
Yeah. For people that don't know, Agony Column and Skate Nigs are two long established, legendary Austin based bands that have a long history separately and together, maybe. So I can imagine the gig was a reunion of all those old fans and band members, etc.
Exactly. That's what it was. And
historically, if I may jump in, both bands, Agony Column and the Skate Nigs, put records out, if I guess I can say late 80s to into the 90s, and created buzz, mainly in Texas, but somewhat globally, and are staples in the Texas heavy music scene. Skate Nigs being a bit of a heavy metal industrial, almost comical at times, progressive at times, because I feel like they were early and part of the sort of like tree of like ministry, industrial metal, kind of an early seedling of that kind of a thing, at least here in Texas.
Sure.
And then Agony Column is this total, I wouldn't even know what to relate Agony Column to. I mean, I know Agony Column from 85 and 86, maybe 86 at the earliest, if I'm not mistaken. And then, eventually had a record out, and the rest is kind of history, but no one sounds like Agony Column. When you think about redneck metal,
yeah,
that was a term like people think, oh, you mean like Jackal? No, I mean like Agony Column. And they're like, well,
Yeah.
What's Agony Column? And I'm going, well, you might like it. Obviously, you're a Jackal fan. I'm a Jackal fan, but I'm talking to this rhetorical person, right? This person who likes Jackal. And I'm trying to tell them about Agony Column, and there's some twang. It's super heavy. There's some thrash. It's hillbilly. I wore the shirt proudly, hillbilly death metal. And that kind of says a lot about, I mean, it's not really death metal and it's not really hillbilly either. But so when
It's somewhere in there.
But when you finally hear it, you're going, oh, you can't really categorize this shit at all. So both of those bands playing together on a double bill around here is like a high school reunion. It's like a family reunion.
And
Christmas.
to be clear, Billy is the bass player in Agony Column.
That's right.
Right. Okay. So
Sorry, that was
nicely.
long-winded, but I think the small history lesson and just to kind of give people some connect the dots, I think is a good idea. Now they can look it up and figure out for themselves.
So is it safe to say that was a one-off thing, or is there any plans going forward for this to happen again, or was that just kind of, hey, let's get together, have some
You've
fun?
done it
bring the whole
before,
crowd
I
in?
think.
We are planning to do a few shows here and there, like when it makes sense. We all know, after being around in this town as long as we all have, no matter how much a fan base misses something, if you play it too much, it'll start getting taken for granted. Or, people just got, lie. They're like, oh, well, I saw him last month.
Right. Right.
So we'll be doing a few key shows, I think, provided, everybody stays alive.
Yeah.
Because, like, hey, guess what, man?
Yeah. I get it.
We old.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that this past weekend. You also yesterday had, let's jump ahead to Ignitor. You guys shot a video yesterday for the new album. The new album, by the way, is called Horns and Hammers. It's the latest album from Ignitor. It's awesome. Tell us about the song you shot a video for and a little bit about the video shoot experience. And when can we see it?
Just pretend I'm not here.
So yesterday, went down, shot a video for Shattered Crosses, one of my favorite songs off the new Horns and Hammers record.
Same.
I think the song has new wave of British heavy metal, classic metal, hook, choruses. It's anthemic. It just has all that stuff in spades.
Mm-hmm.
While, which is great for me. This new record it's different.
It has a bit of a bass solo in it.
It has a bit of a bass solo. Stuart and I, when we were sitting down to track this, to do the bass tracks, he was like, we should do some play off of each other during this lead, And I'm like, I don't know, man. It sounds, I don't want anything to get too noodly,
Yeah.
But we were able to sit down and, he just ran the tape a couple times and I started messing around to it and came up with a part on there that really stuck and complemented what he was doing. And it turned out really great because it really it has this soaring effect. As the lead takes off.
Yeah.
At the beginning, because the lead guitar and the bass, they both take off at the same time, and then I just kind of settle into a little repetition while Stuart goes nuts. But man, I got a couple of bass solos on this record.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Back to Shattered Crosses, but excuse me, you're not stepping on Stuart's solo at all.
No. And that was the thing, to do something that would, work at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a secondary rhythmic part that repeats throughout all of those measures. And that's that section, that solo section, as it's I think it's 4 bars each section. That's a lot of bars, but you play something different with each bar, but it's similar to, but not the same as a secondary guitar part that's happening each section, as well as a held out chopping block rhythmic guitar part. There's four things that are happening. There's Stuart's solo, which is harmonized, but like live, he just plays the one part, and that's completely understandable unless we had four guitar players, right? Mm-hmm. And then there is Robert's rhythm part, which is the part I just mentioned, and then there's a secondary guitar part on top of that, which is like an octave thing, I believe. Yeah, and it's real brooding, like wah da 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 da, something like that.
It's kind of orchestrative.
Correct, like like a cello part.
Exactly.
Or you could almost say like a secondary bass line. Mm-hmm. It's just not a bass.
Right.
So then finally your part on top has its own sort of placement, and it changes voices through each section of that solo part, mid-song, which is another reason why I really like the song a lot, just on its own as a standalone track on the record. So I'm glad that we made a video for it.
Yeah, and it's the video is a Penny Rock production shoot, and we all know those guys do quality work. So what? Tell us, what is the aesthetic of the video? Is it like a performance video, and when will it be available to the public?
It is a performance video, shot live by a incredible, heavily manned, heavily gunned crew at Come and Take It Live here in Austin, Texas. Those guys are going to be working on the video. So I haven't heard a release date for it yet. Say we're just shooting it yesterday. These guys work pretty quick. They've done some other pretty relatively familiar projects, as you guys well know, which you were heavily involved in, I think, with the back room thing, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
The Bloody and Bruised movie. Yeah.
They've done Bloody and Bruised. They've done a Brutality Incorporated video. They've done something for a local band called Tarantula Mountain. I think they just did a video for some punk band called Hard Sell. So they're kind of like one of the local go-to production companies. And they do not just music videos, but also short films and documentaries and things like that. So, and even TV commercials. So as Billy said, they're pros all the way around. So I expect this video to just be awesome.
They're local, but they've also just in the past year, I would say, to be safe, it's become a national, they're dropping their card in a lot of people's hats, and the movie about the back room has been on a regional level, I should say, not just local, but regional calling card, because that movie's been in all the film festivals. Everyone's kind of, they're meeting and greeting a lot of people, so they've been real busy.
Right.
And they couldn't be a nicer bunch of people to work with. Oh, look at the puppy.
Sonia wanted to come say hi.
So sweet.
Hi, Sonia.
Tell me, let's go back to Shattered Crosses. One of the things that stands out to me is the song is cowbell driven. And that's not something you often hear in a heavy style of music. You associate cowbell with sort of glam rock or the Rolling Stones or something like that. How did that get incorporated into the song? And was there any struggle between the band members? Like, I don't know, dude, cowbell's not really a traditional thing in our type of music. This might not go over well. How did that come to be? Because I love it. I think it works perfectly, but it's not something your ears are accustomed to hearing when you listen to a heavy band like Ignitor.
Look, I play in metal bands, but I'm a classic rock guy. let's get that all out in the open, and get that all. Let's get that all. But however, as people know, the man that Billy Chainsaw is that I wear a lot of hats, man.
Mm-hmm.
Musically, I like a lot of different kinds of music, and I perform in bands that play a lot of different types of music. So staying on the subject with the cowbell, Pat, even though he played for the Offenders, one of the most, in my opinion, infamously badass thrash bands of all times, period.
Mm-hmm.
Not just Texas, but the world. I mean, if you've never heard the Offenders, go listen to the We Must Rebel, because you're about to get schooled. Because that's serious thrash.
And they were early on. They were mid '80s, and punk rock and hardcore were alive. And you're calling the Offenders a thrash band, and I'm not. No one's arguing with you in this room. But at the same, because Pat was playing fast back then. He's playing fast now. He's playing fast back then, and it was influential. Because they were, can I say crossover?
And when you say that, I would call them crossover before any of us even probably said the word crossover. Yeah. And they were doing that.
This is around the time of early COC, early Corrosion, a lot of that Bad Brains, right? Was around that same time, and Bad Brains is totally a crossover, and they thrashed as well.
What we had was, Mikey Offender. Mm-hmm. He had connections and dug pretty deep into all this, like East Coast hardcore, Gangrene, Jerry's Kids, Void, a lot of these, bands that say like they were on this This Is Boston, Not LA compilation. And these bands were really blisteringly fast. They weren't like so much the LA bands that were, well, with the exception of Black Flag, but even Black Flag has kind of a weird swing to it at times, Yeah. But a lot of the, most of the bands in LA were real, they were a little more jangly. They had kind of a little bit more swagger. That these guys on the East Coast, they were pissed.
Yeah, but Fear and Circle Jerks, who were LA bands, they had some thrash.
They did, but that East Coast style of that, like Gangrene, Jerry's Kids, that it just blisteringly. That's the kind of thrash I identify more with what Mikey was doing when he was writing all those songs. And then Mikey, so he had that, and then he was a huge Motorhead fan.
Yeah.
And then when he heard Metallica, this thing started to happen for them.
Yeah.
That
all the merging of it.
Yeah, it all just all these planets collided, man. And but anyway, to get back to
ding 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 the cowbell.
Yeah, to how this cowbell came about. Pat, classic rock guy too, but very skilled at other styles, and enjoys them.
I mean, the Scorpions used a cowbell.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you hear it, but it's not prevalent in that genre of music, and the Scorpions aren't even coming close to what Ignitor's playing in terms of.
You're right, but the Scorpions helped Ignitor become.
Yeah, of course, there's some roots there. Yeah, obviously there's some influence there.
Right.
But when I was listening to an Ignitor record, a brand new Ignitor record, somebody answer this question. How did the cowbell, did you guys argue over the cowbell, or was it like, hey, let's try it?
Here's how it happened. We're playing the song, we're writing it, it's coming together. live in the jam room organically, old school, the way things used to be done all the time. The way this band, I feel like, has been real successful.
Yeah.
And Pat started playing it, and we all went, looked at him, you know, and of course, you know, first thing I do is go, yep, yeah, I like that, you know, and of course, you know, the other two guys are like, you know, it's cool, but let's see if we can get it by Jason.
I didn't say a word.
And luckily Jason was cool with it, you know, and that's how it happened, you know?
Yeah. You know, the way you're asking the question, if there was any questions, you know, cowbell, I don't know.
Right.
You know what it was for me is when you've got all the songs are written and you're mixing the songs, you're down to the nitty gritty where you're mixing and mastering the fucking record. It was the volume of the cowbell that was my main concern. All of my mix notes. Here's a scenario, you know, hey, there's new mixes up in the Dropbox folder. Cool, I'm on it. I go put headphones on. I listen to everything. I got a notepad and I write down, turn the kick up 2 dB on song 5, you know, turn the snare up on da-da-da-da-da. The bass solo in Crosses needs to be high, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. On Crosses, it was, you know, once the meat of the song was pretty much there, I kept questioning the volume of the cowbell. Because it was either too loud or you couldn't fucking hear it.
Right.
The cowbell war, it's a volume war. And you don't want it to be so loud. I mean, it's not, you know, the Grand Funk Railroad cowbell or the Nazareth, the Nazareth cowbell.
Right.
Or the Night Train cowbell. You know, it's the Ignitor Shattered Crosses cowbell, and the song is about religion, war, and the go-between, which is money.
Mm-hmm.
And how neither of them seem to care how many fucking dead people are buried in the ground on a government-owned graveyard, which goes for fucking miles. None of them care about that. And we have a cowbell on the song that this lyric is talking about, this dark matter, right? So there's a little bit of, it adds some levity. If you're reading push and pull. If you're reading the lyrics, you're going, holy shit. It's like reading a serious news article or something. And then
here comes this cowbell.
Right.
Yeah.
So it adds a weird, it's an odd contrast, and it works, man. I mean, I loved it when I heard it. It just immediately struck me like it struck me the way Billy is describing it, striking you guys as you're tracking it or rehearsing it or whatever. It's like, what? I wasn't expecting that. And then it's like, but wait a minute. Okay, I'm warming up to it. Hey, that kind of works, you know? So anyway, I just wanted to get the story behind the cowbell.
I like it. Let me add one more thing to it and see Billy's reaction as well on this. It's kind of how Pat plays. Pat has, because he's not really a metal drummer. He can play double kick fine. He can play metal, but he has a very different approach to heavy metal maybe because of what I just said. He's not afraid to just, you know, to have tiny little toms and cowbells, and he's odd at his choice of what to do and where to do it.
He plays a small kit too, doesn't he?
No, he's got two kits and 4 toms. I mean, that's not a small kit. That's actually bigger than the normal. You know, it's bigger than what Felix Griffin plays.
Right. Okay.
So.
He used to play a smaller kit, you know, with just one of those when all those guys were using those double kick pedals and all that. Yeah. But
well, he does both. Some of the gigs that Ignitor plays, you know, if it's a small room, he won't bring the big kit. He'll bring 2 toms, 1 kick with a cheater pedal, and
That's
just
right.
so just so the shit will fit. But
That's why I brought it up, because I think
Yeah.
that's what I've seen him play.
yeah, well, he has to bring a cowbell now.
Yeah.
He's stuck. I mean,
So
I think in the text message thread, Dave, just so you can be the fly on the wall, I was going, and don't forget your cowbell. Please don't forget your cowbell, because it's probably not on his list of shit when he's loaded for a gig.
Right.
Yeah.
But for Shattered Crosses, he's fucked now. He has to have the cowbell. It plays a starring role on an Igniter record.
There you go.
Pretty
You
cool.
built it.
Absolutely.
You built it. You got to live in it.
Yep.
You guys, before the album was officially released, you sort of teased out a video for the Saxon cover, Machine Gun. So tell me a little bit about how that came to be. Why was that song? Why was that band chosen? And you've got guest stars on there. Mark Lopes from Metal Church is singing his ass off on that song, and then you've got Ross the Boss from Manowar, Dictators, Let Us Pray with Mark on vocals.
No, Ross isn't in Let Us Pray.
Oh, he's not. Oh, I'm sorry. Mark is in Ross the Boss, the band. Ross the Boss.
There's the connection there.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Let
yeah.
Us Pray
Okay.
is Mark's other band.
Correct. I got them all tangled up here.
No, you're good.
But so anyway, tell me about how the choice came to be Saxon Machine Gun, and then tell me how the guest players got in the mix.
Honestly, it didn't. Robert walked in one day, and Robert has these periods of being very matter of fact about things. He's just, we got to do this, so Robert brought it in. He brought the idea in, and Robert, guys got some good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Got a lot of respect for that dude. He's a great writer. He's
brought a lot of shit in for this record, man.
He's brought a lot of shit into this record, man. Yeah. I mean, Robert he brought some real bangers to the table, riff wise.
Yeah. Okay.
And so Robert brought the idea in, and he pitched it. Nobody hated it. Everybody went, okay. It's it's one of their more, unless you're a big Saxon fan, one of their more obscure songs, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And us all being Saxon fans and having the connection to the band that we've been lucky enough to have over the years, not only, as fans, but now as, contemporaries and, doing shows with, and, some friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seemed like a natural thing to do, to go ahead and pay homage to one of all of our
influence,
probably most influential bands for every one of us.
Yeah, it's an obscure song, and it's kind of thrashy, so it lends itself to you that way as well.
Right. Of course, me being Mr. I want to hear hooks and big choruses and all that. I want Dallas 1 p.m. or but how many people have already done that?
Right.
So you got to watch that when you're wanting to do a cover. You got to watch that kind of stuff, because the more popular songs, they get done by a lot of people.
Right.
That's not to say that sometimes you get an artist that will go in and do a concept cover where they'll take like some kind of pop song or something and turn it into a metal tune or something,
Well, speaking of Saxon, they did Ride Like the Wind, for example.
Of course, which I finally got to see in San Antonio at Sam's Burger Joint, because, they had to when it came down the last time, they were with Motorhead, and Lemmy was not doing well.
Right.
And so they had to cancel their bigger hall, and they went to a smaller venue to honor the San Antonio show. And man, they played all night, as you know.
Right. It's great.
And man,
it was the best Saxon show
I kept going, ride like the wind, ride like the wind. And because I'd never seen them play it live.
Yeah.
And they played it live, and boy, was I happy.
That's
How did
pretty
you
cool.
get Mark from Metal Church and Ross the Boss involved in this cover?
Well, Jason, of course, is the connection to Mark, because he was. I think it. It was Jason. You want to jump in on this, or?
Yeah,
I think it was a relationship that was struck on one of those cruises, huh?
No, it was Keep It True.
Keep It True.
In Wurzburg, year ago, Watchtower went on direct support for Metal Church, and Udo Dirkschneider was the headliner that night. So it was Watchtower, it was bands all day, but it was Watchtower, Metal Church, Udo. Prime slot, right? So we're playing our show, and we got a few more songs left. I started noticing, dudes in bands standing over in the wings, just chilling, checking out the last couple songs, and it was Mark and a couple of the other guys, and we thank you, good night. We walk off, and it's hey, awesome, fist bump, blah blah blah, and just short meetings like that, and so I'm walking off and fist bumps with Mark and a couple other dudes, and then I ran into Kurt Vanderhoof, and big hug, and I haven't seen you in a long time, and and then I ran into Kurt again at breakfast right before we were getting in the van to go to the airport, and we exchanged numbers, and it was a week later or 2 weeks later or something that Kurt was like, hey, Mark lives in New England. He's from New Bedford, Mass. And he lives there, and the Toys are playing at this club right in his hood. And Kurt was letting me know, here's Mark's number. You should hook up with him. I know you guys hooked up a little bit in Germany, give him a call. He wants to come to the show, blah, blah, blah. So that happened, and me and Mark were carried on like we'd known each other our entire life, and we have so much respect. He's got a monster fucking heavy metal voice. He's so good.
Yeah.
It's fucking good.
Yeah.
And, he had to step into, it's a whole other podcast, but he had to step into big shoes, with Mike Howe and David Wayne, and, he's singing their songs as well as his songs. Anyway, incredible. So we just got on like thieves. And we're back here working on the Ignitor record and making decisions and putting new songs together. And this conversation with Robert Williams comes to play. I think we should put Machine Gun by Saxon on the record. And at the time, neither of us are thinking about any star power to come in and join us and do duets and guitar solos and things.
Right.
So it just popped in my head one day. It's like, this doesn't make any sense as to why I'm a month later thinking, obviously I hadn't cut the vocals to it yet. And I just said out loud and in a text message to all the guys, I think we need Mark Lopes to come in and help me sing this fucking thing. And he was all about it. And so that's how that happened. And then something similar is Robert is chummy with Ross the Boss, who ironically, Mark also is the lead singer for Ross the Boss.
There you go.
So, this weird sort of like flurry of awesome, that just came together. We've ultimately got the singer from Metal Church And we've got Ross the Boss, who happened to be in a band together on their own called Ross, under the name Ross the Boss.
Right.
So it's really trippy how that came together, and
well, it came out great. The song is a total banger, and Mark,
Mark
Mark's
produced
voice
the video.
compliments. Yeah,
He not only
And
sings
Mark-
on it, yeah.
Mark and your voices work really well together, and just adds, I mean, just so much power to that track. And then, as you say, Mark had a big hand in making the video happen, right? So he's a bit of a film guy or video guy.
He has his own creative design company that does videos, and it's, think of it as like commercial art kind of thing, where he can do a logo or make a video or a commercial or anything, right? Lyric video, whatever. And he's really, really good at it.
Yeah.
His company, I'm might say this wrong because it's a made up word, Sonotheria, I think, Sontheria, just like it sounds. Pretty sure that's right. And so anyone out there who needs some creative design, just look up Mark Lopes and Sonotheria. Spell it however you want. I'm sure Google will correct you, and you'll find him.
And it's probably credited on the Machine Gun video.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Somewhere. So first look up the Ignitor video, Machine Gun.
Yeah, because it's out.
And then read the fine print to find out how to connect with Mark. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty much how that came to pass. I wanted to comment that when I cut the vocals for a cover, and this is just how I've always been, I'm kind of a stickler. I want to do it as close as I can to the original singer. It's, if there's any difference in the background music, the track, that's all right. I'm cool with that, being bastardized somewhat sometimes, unless they go into a reggae part and it's not a reggae song. It might be a little odd for my brain to go, oh yeah, I'm cool with that. Well, what am I going to sing over that reggae part? And that would be a very cool challenge, but I'm just using that as an example. Anyway, I'm a stickler about being as close to the OG singer as possible.
Yeah.
And even finding some of the way that their techniques and their swagger, and because I learned something by emulating some of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talk about it all the time when you and I are together, Dave. It's about my Janis Joplin and my Steven Tyler and my Bon Scott and Brian Johnson and Rob Halford and Elton John and all these guys that I love that I've incorporated into my own thing. When I'm singing a Saxon song, I'm trying to go Biff. I'm Biff. I'm thinking Biff. I'm trying to channel Biff as best I can. And I'm not Biff, but I'm really trying to be Biff. Mm-hmm. So to bring in Mark, who's not going to be Biff, he's not thinking Biff, right?
Right.
He wants to complement what's already happening in the song.
Yeah.
And mad respect for that. So he's just letting rip Mark Lopes.
Yeah.
He's being Mark Lopes on a Saxon song, and I've got the Biff.
Right. And I think that's why it works. Yeah. I love it because you're right. Mark sounds like he's singing for Metal Church.
Yeah.
He's being Mark.
Yeah.
And it kind of weaves in and around what you're doing. And it just adds another texture to the vocals. And in his case, that texture is volcanic. I mean, because his voice is just crazy insane.
I gave him as much freedom as I could without it just, here, why don't you just sing the whole thing, Mark? Without it turning into that. I gave him, about half the track.
Yeah.
And I said, go nuts. But I want us to do these together. I want these harmonies to happen. He was cool with it all. He couldn't have been a happier grouping of singers working together and not stepping on each other at all. Like I said, complementing the vocal approach to a classic new wave of British heavy metal legendary track that they still play. That's great. I feel like I should mention this. By the time this Talk Louder episode is available, Machine Gun, the audio will have been played on Sirius FM satellite radio on Liquid Metal on a show called, what's it called? I had it open and I lost it. Mark, speaking of Mark, got it on The Corridor of Covers with Scotty on Liquid Metal. It's debuting on Halloween. Machine Gun
nice.
by Ignitor, the Saxon cover, our version, is on Halloween.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
on Thursday, October 31st. And this was a post that Mark put out. He's been pushing the shit out of this, and I almost feel like he needs to be on the payroll or something. But he knows some dudes at Liquid Metal, and he just submitted the track. We were like, fuck yeah, you fucking throw it out to everyone. Make your grandma play it, you know.
That's awesome. So just to be clear, though, the Saxon cover, Machine Gun, that we're talking about is only available on certain pressings of the Ignitor album. Tell people the difference there and why is that the case?
Jason, take this, will you?
Because I don't want people to run out and buy the album sight unseen and then get it and not have the Saxon cover. So they got to pay attention to which version they're buying.
To be clear, this I'm proudly holding in my hand is the Metal on Metal issue of the record.
That's the label.
Yeah, Metal on Metal is in Europe, and they've done a fine job of creating this slab of metal with us. But this version does not have Machine Gun on it. This has a live bonus track of Hell Shall Be Your Home that was recorded live in Austin in 2019, right before the shit hit the fan, the lockdowns, if you will.
Right.
And we released that full show as a live album called Before the Plague, which you can get at ignitorband.com. Mm-hmm. Now, we decided to take that track. It's on the live album. It's my favorite track on that live album. And of course, that song is from the previous record before this, Horns and Hammers, The Golden Age of Black Magic, which you can also get at the band's website. But the live album is awesome. And Metal on Metal, they don't like bands to put cover songs on their releases, and we respect that.
Okay.
Even though the band spent a lot of time working on that and have this star power, and all the press releases, the first thing you read is featuring cameos from Gabriel Guardian on Ferocious the Martyrs, and on Machine Gun, Ross the Boss, and Mark Lopes, and or members of Manowar, Dictators, Metal Church, Let Us Pray. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then they get the Metal on Metal version, and that's none of those guys are on there except for Gabriel, who's on Ferocious the Martyrs, which is on not both. A cover. Right. Yeah. Okay, so that's why right there, that if you want to purchase Machine Gun, you can download it, you can stream it right now. But as far as buying it on a disc, you have to wait for revoltvinylrecords.com. Revolt Vinyl Records, that's the label that's going to release the U.S. version.
Okay.
Which will not have the live song on it. It will have Machine Gun on it.
Okay.
And so with the premiere happening next week on Halloween, let's hope everyone, got the posting about that premiere and have heard it by now or have already downloaded it. That's great. Thank you. But you can't buy it until the Revolt version comes out, and that's not probably until November.
Okay. Will this be available on vinyl?
Yes, but they're going to have to wait for that. We got to do the CD first because the turnaround is a bit longer for vinyl.
Vinyl, yeah.
But it's coming.
It's going to look awesome on vinyl because it already looks awesome on the cover of the CD. Is the artwork?
Yeah, that shit.
that artwork is amazing, and it's done by Claudio Bergamin,
That's
who is responsible for the Judas Priest Firepower album cover, among other things. He's done album covers for one of Jason's other bands, Cassius King. He's done Burning Witches. He's done Elegant Weapons, which is Richie Faulkner's band.
Mm-hmm.
He did the classic 78 stuff. He's a great fantasy sci-fi type artist. And
everyone should just go to his website because your mind will be blown.
Yeah, and you guys have become friendly over the years.
Oh, yeah.
So,
he's done a lot of stuff for me. Cassius King, he redesigned the Dangerous Toys logo. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on.
So I saw something, I think he posted it, that he was happy to do the artwork, but there was, as there should be, there was a lot of back and forth between either you specifically or the band as a whole and Claudio's original vision of the artwork. So tell me some of that communication and how it finally coalesced into what we're seeing, because the finished product is amazing.
Yeah, this character that I inadvertently created via my lyrics did not have a face. And I kept conceptualizing, and Billy and the rest of the guys were really easy to persuade into this concept where this character had to come to some kind of flesh, right?
Yeah.
Had to become eventually for an image for the cover or just an idea. So here, he's standing here. I know people listening can't see, but he's standing here with his horse, and he is. It's terrible holding shit up to the camera, but for those of you who've seen the guy's face, he's not happy.
Yeah,
he kind of has
either if you were stranded in that hellscape.
Yeah, his face is scarred. He's got dried blood all over everything he owns. His fingernails are forever black. He's not happy. And if you read the lyrics, dark horse, there's a black horse on the cover that's, become not just rhetorical, it's become, somewhat flesh on the album cover art. There's a song called Dark Horse.
I love that song.
Me too, which is very dramatic and talking about how this is the life that you've got. And if you're not like anyone else, you're not like your siblings, you're a bit of a black sheep, you're an outcast. There's a lot of different ways you could look at that. When you say, oh, he's a dark horse, or, usually means that there's something odd about this person or this thing or this widget or whatever you're talking about. And that the song doesn't really leave it open to your imagination as much as it talks about the shit this guy has to do. And I also talk about that a little bit, sets up with the song Imperial Bloodlines, which this person who doesn't have a name, the guy on the cover, I'll just call him, he works... His boss is the general who very well could be his grandfather. He is a child of incest. He is a product of war and hate and lies and blood and, his father is his uncle, shit like that. Just crazy, fucked up shit. And he's really good. He's a captain in his army. And he's really good at his job, which is like a Genghis Khan, a conqueror. Just, the general says, I want you to murder everything in sight because we're going to take over this kingdom and this land and that land. And you're not to say a word about it. So, he's not on the cleanup crew. He's got the death hammer.
Right.
Ace with bow and arrow. a warrior who is not allowed to feel anything, but he does. So he has this passionate feel for where he comes from, but he hates it and he can't change it. So he's just going to kill until someone has a magic strike that will take him out. And he only death can make him become, he needs to die, but he's not going to kill himself. Right.
Right.
So the lyrics have inadvertently again created this concept record with about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 songs.
Yeah.
And Shattered Crosses doesn't really fit in there, but the ones that I did mention, Imperial Bloodlines, Horns and Hammers, the title track, is all about a tribe of warriors who have to be somewhat nomadic, even though they're trying to protect a land that they have had for centuries via their family name.
Right.
So they have to murder and kill and mow the lawn, if you will. And they sometimes have to strike in the night and creep up on them, and then celebration of victory. But then they just have to prepare again. So the lyrics for Horns and Hammers, Imperial Bloodlines, really going into his persona. There's a line in there where the general says, "Bring me the head of the Savior," which is dark, and you can put it to religious storyline if you like. It doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with, I don't care who you're murdering.
Right.
Women, children. It's like the heaviest lyric I think that I've written. So it's fucked up.
So the artwork was inspired unknowingly. Not that you had this directive. It just kind of, Claudio listened, and that's what came to his
We
imagination.
went around back and forth for days on how the facial feature and what he's wearing, because it's not really about what he's wearing, but if Claudio sends me a sketch and it's not right, and I hate telling Claudio Bergamin, this ain't right. You know what I mean?
But he's a professional, and he respects that.
Oh, of course. And he's the one who posted about, this one was, you think with my background and my accolades and my artwork and my styles, that this would have been, no brainer.
Yeah.
And he is correct that I was specific about what this guy's trying to say without words.
I thought it was cool that he posted that there was some back and forth between you guys, and I thought that was very, there's a lot of respect going on.
Oh my
there.
God.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's why I asked, because I thought it was cool too. It gave you a little bit of insight and some, behind closed doors kind of perspective on how that came to be, because the finished product is amazing. The color palette, the art, the characters, the whole thing just looks awesome.
The reviews have been positive on the artwork as well as the music for the most part.
Yeah, the reviews.
Not one person, and this was some backlash that I thought I really did think we were going to get by just, it's a traditional heavy metal band with a knight and his horse, and then they leave it at that. You know what I mean? It's very traditional and very right? It's a heavy metal band with a Frazetta or a Boris type artwork, and it's just, it's got Conan on it. Of course it's got Conan on it.
Right.
But with Claudio actually making sure everyone realizes that the time went into this and the care to make sure that even just the facial, what he was saying without words, like I said, his eyes. And we wanted it to be big enough to where you could see what's happening in this guy's face. As much as it looks like he doesn't give a fuck, he's so torn.
Yeah.
He's emotionally drained and doesn't know how to feel certain things much anymore. And so when you think about that, usually people in the room can relate to that at some point when, you just can't get over something. This guy's life.
Right.
But yeah, I think that he nailed it. I think that everybody, for the most part, in the press has been fairly positive about, a traditional heavy metal band having a Conan type of a guy on their album cover. It's like, how typical,
Yeah, the reviews have been great. Everything I've read, and this brings me back to a point that I wanted to make. I've known you guys for years, and for those who don't know, this current lineup of Ignitor has only come into being on, like, what is it, the last 3 records now? Is that correct?
Yes.
So what you've got, in my opinion, it's like Ignitor. You go back 3 albums: Haunted by Rock and Roll, The Golden Age of Black Magic, and now Horns and Hammers. And to me, that period of the band, which is the lineup that exists today, all 3 of those records, that is almost like a solid new chapter in the archives, if you will, or the history of the band Ignitor. It's almost like its own identity. I look at it as kind of like, just to put it in general terms, people look at Black Sabbath with Ozzy, and then they look at Black Sabbath with Dio, and they consider it almost a new band. And I feel like the last 3 albums of Ignitor have established this lineup as a new version of Ignitor. It's almost its own separate being.
I agree
and
with that.
Each of those albums, to me anyway, I see a progression. Like, this one is my favorite, and that's saying a lot, because I loved the other 2. And then when Golden Age came out, I was like, ooh, this is maybe even a step above Haunted, and Haunted was great. So you guys might be too close to it to examine it from that perspective. But do you get a sense that there's been growth and that you guys are gelling and that this might be your finest hour, or am I just blowing smoke?
I think you're absolutely right. I have felt that way this whole time we were recording this. Every time I talk about it to anybody, if somebody asks me, what's your favorite record? Which record do you think is the best record that you've ever done with Ignitor? Undoubtedly, this is it.
Yeah.
I encourage people to, when they get their hands on the product, to take the time to sit with it, read the lyrics, try and absorb the information without a lot of distractions, because these songs tell stories and they bleed into one another. It's almost like this record it kind of turned into almost a concept record without us even meaning to do that.
It's almost a movie. It's very cinematic.
Yeah.
Very cinematic. And, bringing that up. And yesterday, it's funny you say that, because yesterday when we were doing the video shoot, I was looking around and I was at what was happening, and I was thinking of the record and all the songs, and I was thinking to myself, how incredible of a story this record would make as a movie. Mm. And I was dreaming about, that someday coming to pass. But I think that this record kind of turning into a concept piece on its own, with our character and with the material, is that this thing has probably been in the oven with Jason for a while. This is a story that's in him that has eventually come to surface in these songs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
I got off topic a little bit. Tell me if I did.
No, those are all valid points, and I say this all the time on this show. I really love albums that aren't just a collection of songs. I love them when they are a collection of songs because, of course, they are by nature. But if they actually have a flow, I enjoy it even more because it might harken back to my younger days. All of us were about the same age. You bought an album, you listened to it from start to finish. So flow meant something. The sequence of the songs meant something. In this day and age, it's kind of, you pick your favorite songs in random order or whatever. But
playlists.
Yes, exactly. Now when I hear an album and it sounds good from start to finish, not just musically, not just the playing, but the way the songs flow together, the listening experience, when that works, it's icing on the cake. And I think with this album, you guys knocked that out of the park, even if you weren't trying, apparently.
You better believe we talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, you guys are from an era that you can respect and appreciate the flow of an album and the sequencing of the songs and that sort of thing. You're going to, even though the playlist format exists out there, you guys, the two of you and the guys in your band, are always going to write an album for the album. You're always going to write and place the songs in a way that makes sense from start to finish. You're not just going to come up with 10 random songs that are very good, by the way, and just throw them scattershot into a record.
So to let you in, or people, because people don't think just, it's not automatic, but when the music is just the music, it's got dummy titles. Right?
Yeah.
Here's my working title, right? One of our songs was called Fruity Pebbles. I don't know I don't even remember what song it is, because trust me, it made me want to write lyrics as soon as possible just so I didn't have to call that fucking music fucking Fruity Pebbles ever again.
You ever want to light a fire under Jason's ass, threaten to call the song Fruity Pebbles?
Yes.
And there were other...
Stuart likes to name working titles really cutesy.
Yeah.
Cutesy, funny names, you know.
And so there were more, titles similar to Fruity Pebbles. Luckily, I can't think of any of them right now, which is great. That means my job is I was committed.
You've purged them.
Yes. And so those go into like a Dropbox folder, and they've got all these dummy titles. So as I start to replace the working titles with real song titles and lyrics, and vocal tracks get uploaded and the whole 9 yards, as we see the light at the end of the tunnel, they go in automatically. They just stack up automatically, digitally, alphabetically. Right? So your running order, when you're just going to go into the Dropbox and listen to a new mix that Stuart did or whatever, they're still in alphabetical order, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm not even going to think of the titles, right? Like trying to think of what would have been the first one. Cyber Crush? No offense to Cyber Crush, but it's not the opening. It would have been Chaos Maximus, because that's CH.
Yeah, I love that song too, by the way.
Yeah, and Imperial Bloodlines. So, Shattered would have been way down there. Suicide would have been way down there. Terminus would have been the end. And Machine Gun automatically kept coming up as like track 9 or 10 or whatever. But anyway, so you have to think of, it's not going to work like this. So you physically have to go in and start thinking about how the songs are going to flow into one another, exactly like you're talking about. And sometimes it can be work because there's other people's opinions. This is a democracy here. We're trying to, be as diplomatic and as open, and everyone in this group has somewhat of opinion. Other groups that I'm in, there's half the band's like, I don't care, whatever you guys want to do. And that, trickles down into making it an easier decision between one or two folks.
Right.
This one, I don't remember Pat ever chiming in and going, well, I feel really strong that, this song needs to be the opening track and this one needs to be secondary. As soon as I think it was more or less me and Stuart that had tried to chime in together and figure out a running order for the tunes.
Yeah.
I got no backlash. I don't remember Billy saying anything about where the song placements were. All of us have a different favorite song every 3 days. So we can't.
The mark of a great album, right?
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you can't, that makes it easy, to be open-minded about your sequence.
Yeah.
So since Horns and Hammers ultimately started off the record, because I was pitching the idea. I obviously had an open mind because I didn't want to be a baron, is that, at some point way back when, I was way into calling the record Dark Horse. George Harrison has a record called Dark Horse that I didn't even think about, because I'm so blinders trying to finish my record and have this coolness about it,
Right.
That wouldn't have mattered to me anyway that much.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I at one point I wanted to call it Imperial Bloodlines, and this would have changed the artwork, the aesthetics a little bit when you think about it.
Yeah.
Dark Horse may not have changed what we see and what we ended up with, right?
Yeah.
Dark might, but my concept art wise was you've got this warrior, but he's kind of like those Reaper characters on Lord of the Rings, whatever those guys were called. They were like ghastly ghosts, but they were Reapers, and they rode these horses through the air and shit. Can't remember what they were called, but they were bad motherfuckers.
Yeah.
My initial idea was somebody like that, basically a warrior who's also a death dealer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is ultimately what, if you're the captain on a war team, you're a murderous, cutthroat demon, right?
Yeah.
So that's ultimately what I was going to end up with anyway, in some form or fashion. So back to the sequence of the songs, Horns and Hammers became the title track of the record just by default. It bubbled up to the top, and I remember Pat really gunning for that title.
Yeah.
And maybe even you too, Billy, right?
Yeah.
You thought
it's
that
got
was
a nice ring to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very metal.
So I Googled
Very
it.
metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I was,
Googled.
but
Go
the
ahead.
only problem was I was sure that we were going to get shot down by somebody else using it. And go on, Jason.
Yeah, I Googled Horns and Hammers, and it popped up a few times, and there was some type of diner or beer pub that sold, chicken wings and ribs, who had axe throwing as a entertainment, that axe throwing next to the billiards,
Right.
in the bar. And the place was called Horns and Hammers, and they had a kick-ass logo, of course. It was like, the Capricorn goat or something with cross axes. And I'm like, there's our shit. God damn it, we can't use that.
Like somewhere Agony Column would play.
Yeah, totally. And it sounded,
Yeah.
and it looked cool, and it sounded cool. And they have our full endorsement because the name of their pub is now the name of our record, which is the name of our song. So,
Yeah. In my head, I always get it confused with Horns and Halos, which is the title of a Michael Monroe album.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love that guy.
Yeah. He's
Shout
great,
out.
right? Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I think Horns and Hammers is like your third step now in this direction that I'm just loving. And
there's been, if I may interrupt, please, there's been others that have said what you're saying, Dave, that there's something new stirring in Ignitor now with this new record, which I feel like was just natural to the band when writing. And we've already talked about how the songs came together. It was just, we just showed up and did what we do, and this is what came out. There was no question about any of the songs.
Yeah. I highly recommend for anyone that already has Haunted by Rock and Roll and Golden Age of Black Magic, they're obviously going to run out and buy Horns and Hammers. But if you start with Ignitor, with the new album, Horns and Hammers, go back and get Golden Age of Black Magic and Haunted by Rock and Roll as well, because that's a trifecta, folks. It's like you need all three of those.
We need to do a box set with those three in it.
There you go. There you go. I wanted to ask Billy while we've got him on the show, because I've known Billy now for 25 years or so, and I've never understood the origins of your name, of the name Chainsaw.
Oh boy, here we go. Well,
tell us how you became Billy Chainsaw.
Thing is some of these parts of the story could, be
incriminating,
but hey, what the hell? It was a long time ago.
At your own peril.
Man, back in the 80s, they used to have these things all over Austin called keg parties.
Yeah.
And, I know you guys remember.
Yeah, they had them in San Antonio too.
So I was involved in some nefarious activities, let's say, and a certain gentleman ended up owing me a large sum of money, and I went to a keg party one night, and I was working for this guy at the time that had a tree trimming service. So I had the company truck, which was this big truck, and of course, with the tree trimming business, you got a bunch of chainsaws.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to this party after work in the truck. It was a Friday night, and I catch the guy there finally. I come in through the back door. He sees me. It's a house full of people. He runs out the front door and gets in his car and locks the door. But he doesn't have the keys.
So he can't go in.
He doesn't have the keys because somewhere in the party is the girlfriend, and she has the keys. And so I chase him out there to the car and try and, coerce him to come out and ensure him I'm not going to, hurt him or anything. Of course, like you guys know that I would never hurt anybody.
Never.
Of course.
But he didn't believe me and kept, stayed in there. At the time, I don't know why I didn't think about going and finding the girlfriend and, or any of that, going that route. My only intention was to get my money or some answers or both. So I go over to the work truck and pull one of so it's the Wood Boss 085. And I pull that thing out and
your little friend.
My little friend.
You went and got your little friend.
I went and got my little friend, and I climbed up on the roof of that BMW, and I started that chainsaw, and I'll make this short, and I cut the top out of that thing and dragged him out of there. And so that actually is the true story. And so shortly after that, Mark McCullough, Chico, rest in peace, and all the rest of these Southside guys that were Nailhead, Brian Van Dutch, also R.I.P. A lot of these guys are dead, curiously.
Yeah, they're gone now, yeah.
Yeah, but they started calling me Billy Chainsaw after that, and it's just always stuck.
Wow. This is why I ask these questions.
I have never told this story to people always ask, this is the first time I've ever told it, exclusively on Talk Louder.
There you go, folks.
There you go, folks.
You heard it
we
first.
ask all the tough questions and we get all the great answers.
Man, that was, I have known people as long as I've known you guys that have been asking me this for as long as I've known you, and I've never told them.
Yeah.
I always have. It's a long story, man. It's going to take a while.
Well, let's
I
create
heard the Cliff's Notes versions of it one time, because one time, obviously the name piqued my curiosity. So I asked somebody one time, it might have been Houston Richardson. I said, where did he get the name Billy Chainsaw? And whoever was telling the story was like, dude, some guy, he went after some guy with a chainsaw who was in a car and he cut the car in half or something like that. And I was like, oh my God. Well, I did hear a variation of this story, but I wanted to hear it straight from the horse's mouth tonight.
But I'm wondering if the other, whoever the angel or the devil on the other shoulder would have said, just tell him to stay right here because I'm going to go get the girlfriend. And who knows what else I'm going to do with the girlfriend. My intention is to bring her back here with the keys or just get the keys, and I'll be right back. I wonder how the story would have turned.
Well, yeah.
Because you're not even threatening. You're just going, oh, well, I'll go get the keys, and I'll get you out of there.
Well,
there's two ways I can get you out of there. My little friend.
Yeah.
My little friend.
Or the keys.
Or like normal people with the key.
Hey, can you hit the
That's
frog?
when I tell people the story, about it, and they're like, I tell them the girlfriend with the keys part. They're like, why didn't you just go get the keys? I was like,
okay.
But then I'd be Billy Keys.
Exactly.
I'd be Billy Car Keys or something. I don't know.
Wow, Billy Car Keys. That ain't gonna
You
work.
got a much cooler nickname out of it the way you went. The chainsaw.
Thank you.
We'll leave the mystique to the rest of the story. Don't even need any punchline or outro or ending to that.
Yeah.
That's good enough.
We'll leave the ending out.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good stuff right there. Well, guys, I wanted to congratulate you both on an outstanding record. I think a lot of Ignitor fans are going to agree. This is an amazing album. Falls right in line with Haunted by Rock and Roll, the Golden Age of Black Magic. And if you're discovering Ignitor for the first time via Horns and Hammers, enjoy that record and then go back and find those other two and just dig into Ignitor as a whole. But I think the new album Horns and Hammers is a third home run for you guys. So congratulations. I know the reviews have been coming in. They're great. The video for Shattered Crosses will be out soon. People can look for that. The video for Machine Gun is out now. You can look for that. Any parting shots, guys?
Man, everybody out there, pick this record up. Give it a listen. Read the lyrics. Look at the artwork. There's something going on here, man. There's a wolf in the hen house.
Ooh. Yeah.
Something is coming to boil with this record here.
Yeah.
I've never been as excited about a record that I've made up until this point like this. And I've made some great records with some great people.
True.
And this, I'm really proud of this, and we're all really proud of this. And I feel like when you believe and support your product, and man, this shit's real. This is real to me, man. It's not like, this is it means a lot to all of us. It's our craft, it's our art, it's our lives. Jason, myself, most of the guys in this band, we've given most of our lives to the music. And this has a special shine on it, and I feel like it's gonna go places, man. So join us for the ride, because it's gonna be a fun one, and I think that this is gonna stand up to be one of the greatest heavy metal records made of all times. And I pray and I hope that we can get it out to people where they can appreciate it, man, because it's a real serious piece of work.
Yeah. As soon as I heard the record, I was like, Jason doesn't do a lot of tooting his own horn on this show, and I respect that. He doesn't make it, he doesn't use it as a vehicle to promote all of his own stuff.
I mean, when I can, why not? But it's not,
I know,
it's not about that.
I get it. Yeah. But I heard this record and I was like, oh, dude, we got to do a whole show dedicated to this record, man. This record is so good. And I'm not saying the other ones aren't, but
yeah,
this one just hit me upside the head, something fierce the minute I heard it. And then, as you know, Billy, I was writing the press release for it. So I had to absorb it. Like, I had to live with this record. I had it in my car for about 3 weeks on repeat. And I told Pat Doyle when I saw him at that Accept show, I said, dude, that album is really good. But I'll tell you what, man, I need a break. I've been listening to it. I've been living, breathing, drinking, eating that record for weeks now. But I'll go right back to it. It's really good. You guys did a great job.
Yeah, man. I appreciate that. I think that I think you did a great job with the write-up, and you're right. I think it's going to be something we're going to look back on and be like, my only thing is, like, I'm probably getting ahead of myself here, but
where do you go from here?
How the fuck are we going to do that again?
Well, we keep doing it though. I mean,
we keep doing it, and each one keeps getting better. And hey, maybe we're onto something here. This, when I first came to Ignitor, I wasn't playing stuff like this. I mean, I had played, I played Agony Column, but I mean,
it's not the same.
Not the same, maybe way back in the woods, some of this material on there, what we called, that was our Agony Column's Merciful Fate era, which meant that every song had 10 or 15 parts and they were incredibly difficult to play. And so I felt like during the last, over the time span of the last 3 records, that each one of these records got a little less extreme power medley-ish. Not as much, Stuart went through periods of his life where the writing he was doing was just incredibly difficult. I'm like, are you writing that so to be difficult, just to be as hard as it can be to play, or it's just, and it seems like over these last 3 records, the band has started to move towards more riff-oriented songwriting.
Yeah.
Really focusing on trying to come up with great, heavy, catchy riffs, soaring key changes, and I can't believe that I didn't go into this at least 3 or 4 times during the show, but creating space. Because that's a big thing for me when it comes to Jason, is to create space. Because if you give Jason space to do his thing, man, you're going to get some magic.
Yeah.
You're going to get some delivery of, some cadence, some vocal cadence, some enunciation, some just the way that Jason does things, you got to give him some space to do that in. And when he has that space, he really shines in it,
There was a couple of moments on Golden Age of Black Magic, especially the title track, where those things were happening.
Agreed.
That's why I think I like this 3-album run from Ignitor. I mean, as much as I like all the heavy stuff, I always appreciate it when it's memorable and you can hum it in your head and it's got hooks and riffs. And Billy, I remember running into you one night and you said, wait till you hear the new Ignitor album, man. It's much more like new wave of British heavy metal than the type of stuff we've done in the past. And I was like, ooh, that sounds great. And it is to a degree, but I still hear the Ignite. I still hear the thrashy, bits of Ignitor in there. But you guys have put those elements together in a way that's like, it's not just bludgeoning you the whole time. It is accessible and memorable and gets in your head, but it is still heavy, And I think that's what I like about it. It's got all those elements, but it still has some melody. I'll just say it. It's got melody in there.
Exactly. Metal with melody. And that's what attracts me, I think, to certain metal bands, is that I like melody.
Exactly.
I'm a classic rock guy. I grew up in a household with parents that had huge record collections, and all they played was Beatles and Stones and early Led Zeppelin, and so that stuff is ingrained in me. I remember my father, the first record that he thought was heavy, that he brought home, that was like something that was on the radio at that time, was he brought home a Foreigner record.
Mm-hmm.
And say what you will, about him, but Mick Graham, those dudes, they had a thing. They had that incredible songwriting. But I grew up in that kind of household, so I think that it steered me. It kind of programmed me to. I like these big soaring choruses, and I like these key changes. The Beatles did it. Cheap Trick does it. But it's. I'm not a guy with a bunch of patches and and I don't look real heavy metal, and I love playing it.
Really?
I'm deeply steeped in it, but I come from a lot of places, and I think that translates into a power for me.
Yeah.
As a player.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do stuff that other bass players, I think about things differently.
Yeah.
Than a lot of other players,
To quote guitarist Robert Williams, he said something recently that was to the effect of, if you like traditional heavy metal, there's what are you waiting for? If you like traditional heavy metal, there's nothing. You're going to enjoy Horns and Hammers. If you truly enjoy, the classic traditional heavy metal bands, whatever your definition of that is, okay. You can pick and choose the bands you want under that, name, that moniker, traditional heavy metal, all day long. The answer is the same. There's no way you cannot enjoy something on Horns and Hammers. So I think Robert said it best in that, and Billy's right. I think that there's some emotional excitement about having a new record out. It's always your favorite child once you have a new record out.
Or it better be.
Yeah. That's right.
It better be.
That's right.
Because how is anybody else going to get excited about your baby that if you're not even excited about it?
That's exactly right.
So I feel like, hey man, you know, get excited with us. We're excited about this record. It's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
This is the best record I've ever done.
Yeah, I think the magic coalesced on this one, and to your point about, you know, it being the new one, so you're naturally excited about it. I'll go out on a limb and say I think all of you guys will look back on this record in 15 years and go, that's a standout record. We really dotted all the I's and crossed the T's on that one. I think it's a great piece of work. So my
Agreed.
hats off to the two of you, also to Robert Williams, Pat Doyle, and of course Stuart Laurence, who's been steering this ship from the beginning. Got to give it up for Stuart.
Oh yeah,
great work, guys.
He worked extremely hard on the record, so
yeah,
I think it wore him out a little bit.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a
labor
good thing.
of love. Yeah,
indeed. All right. Well, congratulations again, Horns and Hammers, folks. The new album from Ignitor. Again, look for the Shattered Crosses video coming out soon. The Machine Gun video is out now. The album is out now. Go look for it. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, along with our special guest today, Billy Chainsaw from Ignitor on the Talk Louder podcast.